All right, today we're going to dive into one of the biggest questions out there. When it comes to the power of the state versus the rights of an individual, where do we draw the line? This isn't just some dusty legal theory, you know? It's a constant tug of war that really defines what freedom means. So let's get right into it. And really, this is the heart of the matter, isn't it? Imagine the government says, hey, we need to do this thing to protect national security, but that thing stomps all over your basic rights. In that showdown, who wins? And maybe even more important, who gets to be the referee? It's a massive conflict that plays out in the real world, in real courtrooms all the time. So where did this whole idea of a rule book for governments even come from? Well, you have to go back to the end of World War II. After seeing the horrific abuse of state power, nations across Europe got together and created something called the European Convention on Human Rights. It was a promise, never again. Fast forward to 1998, and the UK officially brought that rulebook home by passing the Human Rights Act, making those protections part of our own laws. Now, this rulebook isn't just one long, complicated list. It's actually cleverly split into different categories. And first up are the ones that are totally non-negotiable. Seriously, think of these as your own personal, unbreakable shield. And here is the crucial distinction you have to get. On one side, we have what are called absolute rights. The state cannot interfere with these. I mean, not for any reason, ever. Then, on the other side, you've got qualified rights. And this is where things get a bit more complicated. The state can interfere with these, but as you're about to see, the hoops they have to jump through are pretty significant. Let's just focus on that first category for a second. Take a look at Article 3, the freedom from torture. I mean, just read those words. It's one of the most powerful lines in the entire convention. Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say no one shall be tortured unless it's a real emergency. Nope, it's a full stop. That's the unbreakable shield right there, protecting every single one of us. And that is the absolute key. For these absolute rights, there's no balancing act. The government can't say, well, national security is really important, so we need to weigh that against this one person's right. It doesn't work like that. The right just wins, every single time. It is a bright, uncrossable red line. Okay, so if some rights are unbreakable, what about all the others? This is where we get to the qualified rights, and this is where the real drama is. This is where the courts have to step in and perform this really delicate and, let's be honest, often controversial balancing act. The key to this entire balancing act comes down to one crucial legal idea: proportionality. Now, it might sound like a complicated bit of jargon, but the concept is actually pretty simple. It just means that if the government is going to limit one of your rights, like your privacy, its actions can't be a sledgehammer to crack a nut. The interference has to be the minimum necessary to achieve its goal. So to figure this out, courts run through a kind of four-part checklist. First, they ask, is the government's goal even important enough to justify messing with a fundamental right? Second, does the thing they're doing actually help them achieve that goal? Third, and this is a huge one, was there another way to do this that was less intrusive? And finally, they step back and ask, have we struck a fair balance here between this one person and the interests of everybody else? Okay, so we've got the rules, we've got the unbreakable shields, and we've got the balancing act. Now, let's see what happens when we throw these principles into the ultimate pressure cooker, a case involving national security. Let me tell you about a guy named Mr. Chahal. He was an Indian citizen living in the UK, and he was involved with the Sikh separatist movement. Now, the UK government saw him as a national security threat and wanted to deport him. But here's the twist. Chahal said, hold on, if you send me back to India, there's a very real chance I'll be tortured. So you can see the dilemma this created for the court, right? It's a head-on collision. On one side, you have the government saying, look, the safety of the entire country is at stake. And on the other, you have Mr. Chahal saying, yeah, but my absolute, unbreakable right not to be tortured is at stake. So what gives? Well, the European Court of Human Rights came back with an answer that was crystal clear. They said that protection from torture is absolute. It doesn't matter what the person has done or how undesirable or dangerous the government thinks they are. That unbreakable shield from Article 3 holds strong, period. In essence, the court said you can't just outsource torture to another country. Now let's jump ahead in time to the period right after 9/11. In that climate of fear, the government passed a pretty extreme law that allowed it to lock up foreign nationals suspected of terrorism indefinitely and without a trial. The argument, of course, was that this was a national emergency, but the question is, was it a proportionate response? The UK's highest court at the time took a look and said, nope, and their reasoning is just fascinating.
They said the measure wasn't proportionate because it was discriminatory. It only applied to foreigners. The judges basically pointed out that, terrorism doesn't check your passport at the door. Since the law did nothing about potential threats from UK citizens, it wasn't a rational way to tackle the overall problem. Therefore, it was disproportionate.
So these cases are incredible examples of this tension in action. But they also bring up another huge question. How can any regular person hope to challenge the full might of the government? Who actually steps in to be the referee and make sure the state is playing by its own rules?
Well, the answer is a hugely important legal tool called judicial review. This is the process that allows the courts to be that referee. Now, they don't get to remake the government's decision or say what they would have done differently. They just check one thing. Was the decision made lawfully? Did the government follow its own rulebook? It's our single most important safeguard against the overreach of power.
So after all that, what's the big picture? Well, the main thing to realize is that this isn't a story with a simple, happy ending. It's a constant, ongoing debate. It's this dynamic tension that lies right at the very heart of what it means to be a free and democratic society. So, let's just quickly recap the big ideas. The Human Rights Act is our national rulebook. Within it, some rights are absolute. That's our unbreakable shield. Most rights, though, are qualified, and that requires the courts to do that constant balancing act, using the test of proportionality. And the referee keeping an eye on the whole game, that's judicial review. These aren't just abstract terms. They are the fundamental tools that protect us all. And all of this leaves us with that one, final, and probably unanswerable question. It's a question that every single generation has to ask for itself. In a world that's always changing, with new threats always on the horizon, where do we, as a society, draw that line? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining me.